I want to just check on the computer it's actually working, because last week I had a bit of a panic because I kept appearing to be cutting out. But anyway. Oh, well, it is working because I can hear myself going on. So let me just mute that and move that and move that. And I think we are sorted. Okay, well, welcome everybody to our How to Repair Pendulum Clocks live stream event. Hi, Franklin. Good evening from the Netherlands. And we're in competition tonight with the AHS, with the Antiquarian Horological Society. So I don't think we'll have a big audience, but everybody is, that makes everybody even more special. And of course, we run the event anyway because it goes on YouTube and people might want to catch up. It's going to be pretty steady this week because we are cleaning, and cleaning's either people's least or most favorite subject, but always super controversial. So we like a bit of controversy. Hi, Andrew. Oh, and Derek. Yeah, it's working. Magic. Good. Right, we're cleaning this week. But before we get on to cleaning, we just want to finish up with what we were messing about with last week. And that was clock. That was our bezel. And just a little focus. In fact, we just that. Hi, Tony. Just zoom out a bit without seeing all the junk, the terrible junk that's surrounding it. So last week we soldered the bezel back together. You might remember there was a lot of discussion about the joint or the hinge, as some people call it, and it was broken and been repaired. And so we decided to fix it back onto the, zoom in there, fix it back onto the inner bezel, the sight ring, by soft soldering it, and then just use the hinge that was there. We kind of had to turn it inside out and then solder it on the inside here. Now, ultimately, even though I tried to be quite careful, I ended up soldering on the wrong part onto here. It didn't really matter. This had just been cut away before. Just get that bit of wire out of there. It had been cut away before, so it looks a little bit ugly there. But the good news is that it made a nice, strong repair. And I was in a bit of a panic last week because I thought that the heat affected zone had really damaged the sort of gilding. But actually, when I went and washed the whole thing in hot soapy water, oh, hi, Paul from Salford, and Time for Clocks again. Great to see you all. Yeah, just thinking of the, I've been in correspondence today with institution from Salford way on, kind of Cheshire, West Manchester anyway. That's quite good fun. Anyway, so I was a bit worried, but I went away and washed the whole thing in hot soapy water, as you have to do once you've done any kind of soldering with flux. You must get the flux off, otherwise it'll just continue to corrode. And I was kind of quite surprised. It isn't without its slight problems, but I noticed that this lug here, where that had been heated, also was a bit black. So mine actually wasn't too bad. Now, on this side, of course, we had to clean up the hinge. You've got to clean the joint. Oh, by the way, we've got Team Open Clock Club here tonight who has forgone their punishing social regime to be here. So that's nice. So, yeah, really pleased with that. Now, of course, we had to clean this. We've lost a little bit of this kind of corrosion or patina, if you want to call it that. And of course, there's none on the hinge where we cleaned it up to solder it. So we do have options. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I'll just talk through what those options might be. So I'm just getting supplies. So there are a few ways that you can tackle this issue of, when you've got new work. I'll just see if my camera actually wants to behave focusing. Otherwise, I'm going to put it on manual focus to sort it out. Anyway, of course, there are different sort of, might sit down. There are different ideas about the kind of presentation of new work within old work. Personally, I'm pretty happy typically just to let it be. Then other times you've got a situation where you might want to tone something down. And of course, some people, and I've been in that situation myself, where you've got a situation where you actually want to make something kind of look like it's old. Now, of course, we can't make things look old. As the old saying goes, I can make something look 100 years old or 200 years old or 300 years old. And the answer to that is, yeah, it takes 100 or 200 or 300 years. And so I don't really want to go down that route. However, in this case, I'm going to leave it, but we could use some of this stuff, so-called antiquing, quote unquote, fluid. It's sometimes called patinating fluid. You can make your own. The people at college, when I used to be there, the metals people used to make a whole range of what they call patinating fluids for every kind of color of a finish you could imagine, from black right through to pinks and blues and greens and all those kinds of things to match in with historic work. So this actually works really well. This is Curata brand. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to paint it. So the thing is with these finishes, it doesn't take much just to hide from the eye. So I don't know, you've got something like a tall case clock and you've made new pulleys, or you've supplied new weight pulleys. You open the trunk door, you don't necessarily want them to look sort of glaringly new, staring you in the face. So you could use something like that, so-called patinating fluid, but you could also just paint them. One of the best things, if I can find it here in my box of oil paints, which I'm very fond of because they smell absolutely delicious. Oh, here we are. It's an old tube, but it's burnt umber oil paint. So just mix something like this up with a bit of turpentine spirit. And it'll just kind of take that new edge off things. You can heat brass components if you're not bothered about annealing them to kind of not red, but quite hot, and then quench them in soapy water. And that builds up the yellow sort of color. And then we've got acrylic paint as well, which is really, really useful. And back, we've got these things, which are really for they're really for furniture, but they're incredibly useful for metal as well, because you can melt them, you can thin them down, and they're retouching crayons. You can see they've had quite a lot of use. But if you deal with clocks, inevitably you're going to do something with cases as well. And these are really useful. They're just really, there's wax crayons, and then there's a version that's shellac based, which you actually have to melt with a soldering iron or something like that. And you could, on this, just, if you were in a rush or you just wanted to tone this thing down a bit, I haven't got a green one because we've got this copper corrosion product here, but you could actually just use a little bit of wax crayon there in the joint. And what it'll do, as you can see already, a bit darker, is it just takes the eye off the thing. And it's not something I do a whole lot, but you can see there already that you could spend a bit of time and tone this in with a bit of wax or paint or whatever. Anyway, I'm not going to do that, although I've slightly done it already. But these are really useful little trips. In fact, if you are, as I am, a kind of clockmaker on the road as well at the moment, I'm both sat in front of my computer and out on the road. Those touch crayons are incredibly useful. And we're going to talk about other things in a minute, because inevitably at some point you're going to either make a scratch on something. When I first started, or when I first started as a student anyway, there was some great fantasy about, it's just there, about having an engineer's toolbox or a wooden bound toolbox with brass corners, which we all bought one sort of on the internet. And I went to somebody's house, this is quite a long time ago now, and inevitably jammed the corner of this toolbox into a bit of furniture. So those touch-up crayons or filling crayons come in incredibly useful. Nevertheless, just checking my other machine. Nevertheless, I never take that toolbox. In fact, I think they look great, but they're actually pretty hopeless. They're really a workshop thing. What I've got now is a tote bag, one of those kind of soft canvas tote bags with a metal frame underneath. Then at least if it clangs into something, it's not going to cause too much damage. Okay, so here's our, so we've got our bezel, which is repaired. Very happy with that. I don't know where the glass is, seem to have lost it, but anyway. So what we've got to do is to put this wire, get the, come on. Focusing. Maybe it doesn't change mode when it's already on. Try it again. Nope. That sounds better. Great. Turn it on and turn it off and turn it back on again. That sounds much better. Okay, so we've got to get some soft solder off this wire. It's still got a few chunks on there. Well, we know how to do that. We've done that a lot in the past. Quite interesting. This is an iron or a bit of steel wire that's been plated by the look of it. A lot of the parts on this clock seem to have been plated. Anyway, I'm going to get that off because I'm not going to secure it again with soft solder. But when I put the glass back in, wherever it's gone, I'm going to use this adhesive. So it's not much left in the tube, and I need this for Monday. But this is a product called, ironically, it's called restoration adhesive, but you can kind of ignore that. It's an acrylic resin called Paraloid. Sounds like paranoid, but with an L in it. Paraloid B72. There are different paraloids. And I think this acrylic was developed, it started being used in conservation about 30 years ago. And it's kind of good and useless at the same time. The thing about a lot of things in conservation, which is my sort of day job, is that you've got things like these adhesives that don't actually really, they're not particularly adhesive. They tend to be quite cohesive. So the whole point is you can get them apart again. And this cropped up on the Facebook group, which we'll come on to in a second. So what I'm going to do is that when the wire is cleaned up, I'm going to glue the wire back in where it was soldered, but using paraloid B72, which is reversible in acetone and some other solvents as well. And the great thing about this is that it's non-yellowing as well. So a lot of adhesives are yellowing, and you can use paraloid not only here as an adhesive, you can also use it as a consolidant if you've got some wood that's particularly sort of eaten up by furniture beetle or something, or you can use it as a lacquer, or in fact as a barrier layer. So if you're going to put something on something else in the museum world, most things have got inventory numbers on them. So rather than writing the number directly on the object, you paint on a layer of this first, then you put the number on, then you put another layer of this on top to make kind of a sandwich that you can, at least in principle, get off at a later date. I see the AHS are underway, so that's good. It's got a bit of stereo going on here. So yeah, this is going to be useful for that. And I mean, it may not be appropriate for that many people here, or it may be, who knows. But if you ever get involved in that kind of museum-y heritage kind of work, then this is incredibly useful. It's really useful to know these kinds of products that world uses. Anyway, so that I'm going to use on Monday. I'm going to a museum to do a condition report on a watch that has got broken dial feet. It's going off for loan. And so I'll just use a bit of this just to tack the dial in place. It was kind of relevant here because if we just move back to our trusty old clock case, zoom out a little bit, there we go. There are 3 screws, 2 of which were there, one of which has dropped out before I got the clock. You can see here that the case had already been moved, the screw hull had been moved, and these 2, the threads were quite dodgy. Now, by coincidence, it cropped up on the Facebook group. And if you're not a member of our Facebook group, and I know a lot of people don't like Facebook, and TBH, I don't like Facebook either. It's like the most illogical, messy kind of front, but it is a really useful way for us all to keep in touch. So on the Facebook group, somebody asked about plugging holes, in wood where you've got a stripped thread. And that was, yeah, soft solder is kind of reversible. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Del, it is. Yeah, I mean, nothing is reversible, both philosophically or actually mechanically, I suppose, that's physical. That's why I think the Americans tend to call it retreatability, so it can be done again. There was a big hoo-ha in conservation, I think it was in the 1970s, because something called soluble nylon started being used as an adhesive and a varnish and a consolidant. And then inevitably people found that soluble nylon couldn't be undone. And then that's where this idea of retreatability or reversibility came. But you're absolutely right, I could put solder on again. What I don't want to do, because it was quite nerve-wracking in the first place, was start heating the thing up yet again. Remember, I've already got a big soft soldered joint on there, and you could protect it from heat and all that stuff. But anyway, I'm going to use the glue because it's kind of nice and straightforward. So we talked on the Facebook group about plugging holes. Now, these weren't too bad, but what I did was I plugged them again with a different kind of so-called reversible adhesive, which I know I've probably talked about before, but that was this hide glue. Now, Tight Bond make a whole range of glue, so Tight Bond isn't the answer. The answer is that we're using this hide glue. If you've ever seen something like a guitar being made or work done on historic furniture, musical instruments, that kind of thing, the luthier or the furniture maker will use an animal glue typically, and presumably this is made out of the hides of poor old animals. Anyway, rabbit skin glue or fish skin glue or something like this. Now, the traditional way to do it is to have like a bain-marie, a hot a pot of warm water with another pot inside a glue pot, and you kind of keep this thing going the whole time. Now, obviously, that's not practical for me because I don't do that many repairs on wood, like once every year, no, maybe once every month. So this is a really useful sort of alternative because, again, you can put it in your kit to go on the road, and it's not waterproof. It's not stronger than the metal or wood itself. It's not got any amazing claims to fame other than the fact that you can just get it undone again with a bit of warm water or steam or something like that. So really recommend this. And the reason, not only because of its reversible properties, but if you use white glue like PVA glue or something, yeah, it's amazing stuff. But actually, the material around it will often break before the glue breaks. I don't want that. I want the glue joint to be the weakest part of the structure or thereabouts. Same with polyurethane glue. I'm sure it's absolutely amazing for sticking stuff together where you don't want it to fall apart in industry or where there's a health and safety concern. But I, again, don't want that lack of, I don't want to invite the lack of reversibility. Anyway, so a couple of things here which are really useful. I wouldn't be without them in my kit. And the last but not least, I might have lost it. Oh no, for paper, often we come across paper labels. The one on this clock has been lost, unfortunately, but we've got plenty clocks with paper labels around. And again, for gluing the edges of those down, this is Japanese. Is that way up? Not going to make any difference to me because I don't read Japanese, but it's wheat starch paste glue. So again, it's got this sort of concept of reversibility. I put those on the Facebook book group last week. So it's quite fun. And it's also kind of always one of the great joys of working, which I don't anymore, but in a shop or a place where there are other people from different disciplines, is they've all got their different way of doing something. So the furniture people, the books people, the paper, the metals, ceramics, you name it. Like that material we talked about before, that glue called Hextal, HXTAL, which I got from ceramics people, which is an epoxy resin, not reversible as such, but with a refractive index, it's very close to that of glass. If you've got cracks in glass or you want to repair glass. Yeah, it probably does have an expiry date on it because it's a natural product, I suppose. I can't actually see it. But yeah, I mean, I just buy it in these small bottles and it lasts a couple of years and then it actually smells really nice, if you like that kind of thing. So what I did here was, moving on, is to plug these holes. Now, when you're plugging holes in timber, I'm not a timber, wood, furniture restorer kind of person, but you want to plug with a material that's a similar density to the host material. For obvious reasons, you don't want the plugs to be harder than the surrounding material. So if it's softwood, plug with softwood. If it's hardwood, plug with hardwood. A lot of people say to use matches. And the good thing about matches is that they are always kicking around, or mostly always kicking around. And they're nice and squishy, so you can squeeze them into the holes. But I've found with matches is that the wood is so soft and kind of pulpy that the threads just pull out again. So each to their own there. I used a bit of pegwood here. So I bit of glue in the hole, pushed in the thing, the bit of pegwood shaped, snapped it off, and there we are. So we can fix our new bezel on, which will be great fun. Just got some horror then that I'd actually done it the wrong way around, but no. Interesting that this American clock, anyway, I don't know whether it's, yeah, exactly, egg white, Del, you're absolutely right. And also, if you cook and you cook with garlic, you will know that the stuff, whatever it is, that's under the skin of a garlic is also very glue-like. And if you ever worked on boule furniture or boule type marquetry, I think that was often glued down with garlic type glue. And you'll also know, if you ever work on boule marquetry, that it falls off the whole time. It's a full-time job just gluing it back down again. So I'm going to remake these holes, just get a little drill if I've got one, which might be easier said than done to make a pilot hole. So what I want to check is that the screws, of which there are only 2, so I'll have to find another one. The good thing about the period in which we live is there's a heck of a lot of new old stock stuff around. So these, probably can't see it there, but tiny little brass screws, which I'll measure one of them, are basically still available. I don't know whether they make them new or not, but in the UK, there was a company called Nettlefolds. I've got some of their boxes somewhere of screws, maybe on the floor. Anyway, so you can still buy slotted head screws pretty much like these old ones. Presumably they will continue to be made in relatively small quantities. So should have my poppy on today, shouldn't I? No, I haven't. Apologies for that. So I'm just checking that the little drill that I've got is actually, it's maybe a bit too big, but I might go with it in lieu of actually having anything else to hand. Wants to be about the size of the minor diameter of the screw. It can be a bit smaller than that. It certainly doesn't want to be much bigger, otherwise it will defeat the object of actually plugging the hole in the first place. We'll just have a look here, see if there's anything a little bit smaller. And then we'll get on to some cleaning, which might be even duller than talking about plugging holes up, but hey-ho. Yeah, I've got a drill there that's a little bit smaller. I'll use that one. Interestingly to me anyway, those these little drills with the titanium nitrided end, or that particular brand called Microbox. I don't know whether they're still made or not, but when I, again, 20, 30 years ago, I used to buy those because they were the only small drills I could find before the internet. And I actually found that some of the ground faces on those are actually the wrong way around. I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't drill. So if you buy those drills, it's always worth looking through an eyeglass to check that it's actually drilling the right way around. Just put that in there. Got my trusty pin vise on one of them. I really like this. I mean, I've got all the cleaning to do on the clock, but I don't think there's a whole lot to do now. So if I find some time, which is a bit tricky, we might be moving towards actually reassembling it this week. So just want to get my scriber to get the hole started, because that's better, wandering off a bit. I think we've talked about this before, but it's always, I think, an interesting point with these subjects like repairs to woodwork and dial painting and all those kinds of things, is where you, so I'm just drilling in with a little pin vise, where you draw a line in your practice. I suppose it depends on what interests you as far as groups like this are concerned. It's always quite good fun to go off-piste a bit, but of course you can, as we always say, you can always get into quite a lot of trouble as well, which is, dare I say it, one of the kind of advantages, I think, is working like this in this relatively conservative way, is that if you kind of are seen to not be doing much, again, quote unquote, yeah, glue and sawdust is a good idea. I've used that quite a lot for filling in cracks in timber and things like that. I mean, I presume, well, I know there are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of YouTube channels that show you so-called life hacks and things. So rather than risk this, I'm gonna screw in my screw. Laughing in a screwdriver. I've lost my screwdriver. I've been doing some photography today for our second book, which is very, 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 very long in the gestation. Not as long as the first one was, but the problem is that, of course, people know about this one. So there we go. Put the screw in, nice and tight now. And let's just put that chap in there. So we'll be looking forward to our next live stream clock, which I think is going to be Derek's anniversary clock. Kindly sent us. That'll be good fun. We might have a wee break because it'll soon be Christmas. However, I think that would be great to do that next. Should be, he says, famous last words, pretty straightforward. Okay, so I've got that on there. Always satisfying when you've had these sloppy threads and then it's tight again. You think, yeah, that's going to be okay for another fair few years. I'll just do the second one. I won't bother with the third one yet because, as I said, we haven't actually got a screw for it. So I'll measure up the screws and either pop across to the hardware shop. We're lucky here in York that we've got a couple, in fact. We're a bit of an embarrassment of riches. A couple of those sort of traditional hardware shops where they've got some really, really useful things. Is literally just across the road. So nice to pop across there. There we go. I'll just put that back. I haven't lost it. Yeah, I'm wondering with the torsion pendulum clock that we're going to do, whether to do that as like a marathon sort of special, just do it in one go, a bit like American clocks. I don't have masses of experience with those things, but I've got some, more than with American clocks, that's for sure. And anyway, we've got Dell there to help us out, so maybe again we'll see. Well, we need to get this finished first, but we'll see what Christmas says. So I'm thinking about the case of this clock and getting it finished, and what we're going to do about the back, because of course the back is missing altogether. And I really fancy putting some acrylic there, a sheet of Perspex, something like smoky grey or something like that. Really fancy something a little bit different. All right, it's actually going to go in the hole. Yep, good. There we go. So yeah, we've got a missing screw here, but I'll order some of those up, but otherwise really firm. And again, I think with these repairs, they don't have to be high drama. And it's kind of easy for me to say because obviously I take my time over it and I haven't got customers breathing down my neck in this this case. But you know, because we're not sort of like really diving in there, yeah, it's not massively high drama. So or aka pretty dull, although I really enjoy it. So oh yeah, so a couple more jobs to do there. I've got to refit the dial plate, which we vacuumed last week, and I wrapped it up and put it somewhere which I've lost it now, but it's not far, in acid-free tissue. I'm going to get this wire, the solder off the wire, and then once we've got a new screw, then we are done there. So I'm really pleased with that. Nice and firm, and opens and closes like a good one, as they say. Really happy with that. So yeah, just got to think about the back. So the back is missing altogether. You can see in here where I have done a repair. Again, same thing, plugged holes with pegwood with some hide glue. And here, this block, because the wood is, the grain's running vertically, it is split along the grain in two places, and that piece had completely dropped out. So glued it back in and just put a bit of cotton tape on there with hide glue, and it's nice and firm just to prevent it from moving, because inevitably it's going to move. In fact, I've seen on pieces of furniture, the problem is if you've got a piece of timber like that, it moves, you know, expands across the grain, and it will crack again. So I've seen people actually put loose joints in there so the wood can actually move, like on a tall case clock door where you've got rails at the top and they always move. So anyway, very happy with that. I need to have a bit of a measure up. I think really kindly on the Facebook group, somebody wrote in, I know maybe it was a response to one of these videos, brown paper bags, yes. Yeah, a lot of those places have gone, haven't they? It was funny. I went in the sort of grocers, and they have plastic bags and brown paper bags. So everybody, of course, gets the brown paper bags. So yeah, somebody said these were 2-part. So I need to be useful to look at a picture of one, but I think I'm actually just going to use a sheet of Perspex on here. We've got screw holes, so I'll use existing screw holes. Can't really get it all in the shot, but it's just basically something to keep the dust out. So I think I'm happy with a bit of Perspex. Don't need to kind of hide it or anything. And it would be quite cool to be able to see in the back as well. In fact, there's a great big hole under here, which I think Jeremy pointed out was probably to restart the pendulum. Probably, I'll let the sound out, who knows, restart the pendulum. But yeah, I could also, we put some LED lights in there so people can see the movement from the back. I don't know, all reversible, but stuff like that. So we've done there. Repairing parallel universe. Right, okay, so let's just recap on our cleaning. Before we did have a quick look at bushing on this, and I felt there was nothing there that needed doing. However, we haven't really gotten to the escapement yet, but because the clock was kind of quite dirty, you can see here, but on the in the pinions in particular, there's quite a lot of dirt in there, and the pivots are really worn, although I'm going to leave them as they are if I can get away with it. But I don't think there's much we can do really in terms of assessing depthing, which might lead to bushing, I don't know. Because what I do with the pivots, and it would probably be quite controversial, is if they do need bushing, then I would actually put in a longer, slightly extended bush to take advantage of the fact that on the pivot here, I'll get my ruler. We've got about 0.8 of a millimeter that's worn, so where the plate is, and 3 millimeters, or actually the usable bit is about 2.6, 2.7 millimeters of extra pivot sticking out. So there's no reason, I don't see why, if we were going to bush, that I'd actually put an extended bush in there, then I don't need to do anything with the pivots. Don't need to do anything with the pivots anyway. This clock presumably has been running a dirty, which exacerbates wear. At least as far as I'm concerned, it's not going to be running the whole time. So I'm pretty happy to leave the pivots as they are. I did say I'll take some photographs and put them on Facebook. There will be avalanche of complaints, but anyway, it never stopped me before, I suppose. So I don't think I can really put it off. Oh, those springs, by the way, are out of the French clock. Totally different project. Got them mixed up. So I don't think there's much we can do really other than launch into cleaning. So with the cleaning, I'm going to do my usual thing, nothing particularly new here. And that is I'm going to use paraffin, just regular DIY shop paraffin. Oh, find it. There we are. Bart O-line premium paraffin. That's what I'm going to use for washing and rinsing. Two-stage process. Again, just as we described in our book, described it here before, did with the live stream clock, the pub clock. Going to just wash it, peg out the holes. It's the working surfaces that are particularly interesting / important to me to get them clean. And then once it's all washed and cleaned and rinsed and dried, then we can look at depthing and bushing next week. So I'm going to start with the springs. Now the springs look to me to be pretty much the same. There doesn't look to be a lot of difference between them. However, I did put labels on. I'm going to leave those labels on and try and put them back in the right order. I don't know whether there's any difference. I guess they actually look very same color. But interestingly, I think I've mentioned this before, on this French clock, if you look, they're different colors. And you might see that and think that one of them's been replaced, but no, that's how they were / should be. They're a similar thickness, but the going train is tempered more, so it's a little bit softer. So therefore, it's a little bit less strong. The striking side is stronger. So if you work on French clocks, those pendule, and you see the springs like this, it's not a problem or a fault. It's how they were from new. You've got brown on the striking side and blue on the going side. So I'm going to get my extraction on the go here. So again, apologies for the noise. Just bring it down so don't cause too much of a stink. There we go. And I turn it on, check it's plugged in. Is it plugged in? Takes quite a while to get warmed up. No, not plugged in. It works while you sleep. There we go. That would help. Actually got it plugged in now. So as I said, might be a little bit noisy. Some gloves. We'll just start with the springs. I'm not going to completely clean the springs today. I'm going to begin, but then I'm going to, because they've got this, you can see here, this stuff on them, which is, you see me scrape it off with my fingernail. It's the oil and the dirt has turned to a kind of varnish. So that isn't going to like wash off in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a preliminary scrub, and then I'm going to wrap them up in tissue paper, acid-free tissue, but slightly with the solvent on there, and then put them away and leave them for overnight to try and get that oil softened up. It'd probably be a good thing if couldn't hear me banging on. So I've got my gloves on. I should buy some of those disposable aprons as well to stop my clothes getting splashed, but I keep forgetting. Put it on my list. So for this preliminary wash, we only need a little bit of paraffin. Brush. Always in the search of materials. So I've gotten a brush, just a regular paintbrush, natural bristle. What I would say is that normally I would try and find one with a ferrule that I'd wrapped. So get some cotton tape and wrap around the metal ferrule to prevent scratching. I don't seem to be able to put my hands on one at the moment, so we'll have to just go with this. This is actually good, this wooden brush. The problem with this is it's not really long enough to get to the middle of the spring. So I'm just going to, I won't labor this too much because it's not super exciting. As I say, this is just to really begin to get that oil moving. Yeah, I mean, I might use a bit of steel wool if that oil is persistent. I'm kind of quite interested in the surface of the spring, and there's a question of whether you open the spring up to clean to the center. I have seen some people put this end in a vise and actually stretch the whole thing out. Not massively keen of that idea. In fact, you can see here, look, already this varnishy oil is beginning to loosen up. So here we've got daughter home from university. Hi. You're right. Good, good, good. Rachel. Sign language, not sign language. Yeah, you can see already this liquid's getting really quite grubby. Yeah, as I say, I used to open up the open up the spring, stretch it out. But I've had one instance where I was working on a carriage clock and took the spring out, and I think I broke it. It broke after a few weeks, but I think I broke it by taking it out and refitting it. Very kind of hard, brittle spring. Maybe it would have broken anyway. But I was speaking to a watchmaker who works on older watches, and he said, and I was really pleased to hear this, that actually if he thinks the spring is really old, then he'll clean it actually in the barrel or do what he can. Because he has had quite a few experiences where a spring that's maybe 100, 200 years old breaks pretty much immediately after taking it out. So this is just really a preliminary wash to get things moving. Yeah, I might try a bit of steel wool, but again, I don't really want to. This is the 4 nought, so 0000 grade, so the finest grade you can easily buy. And of course, the beauty of this is it will very quickly remove that oil. But I'd rather just leave the thing overnight and see what it looks like tomorrow. But yeah, we want to get that oil off, but certainly nothing else. And see there already, it's actually the oil's surprisingly just wiping off really. So just going to do the other one. Yes. So just get a sheet of acid-free tissue paper. Going to leave the thing wet and just loosely wrap it in there. And I've got here a deeper container. I'm going to pop it in there, do both. Then I'm going to just put a tiny bit of spirits in the bottom, and then I'm going to leave that overnight. I'm going to cover it up with some, don't know what really, plastic or a cling film or something, just to stop it from being too stinky and a fire hazard. And then just leave that overnight and see what they look like in the morning. I think actually most of this dirt is just going to wash away. Oh, hi, Mark. Better late than never. Yes, of course, better late than never. Well, thank you for making it tall. Yeah. All right. Okay. Gosh, so I'll go here digitally because notifications pop up. I made this video, which I'm sure some of you have seen, about repairing a pocket watch, and it's not exactly gone viral, but it's got like 40,000 views or something, and the notifications keep popping up, so it's really distracting to keep looking at those. Right. I've mentioned this many times, and I've mentioned it on Facebook yesterday, I think, that my super favorite way of repairing clocks, and everybody has their own approach, is to do everything around the clock first. Again, I've been working in institutions this past couple of weeks, and I noticed that so many pendulums actually can't be regulated because they're either being dropped and they're damaged, or they're gummed up with old oil, or there's something mechanically wrong with the thread or something. And so I really like to deal with the case, the pendulum, the dial, the bezel in this case. Then when you get the movement done eventually, it's like everything's done and you're not tempted to kind of cut corners by saying, oh, I'll just do that later. Anyway, it's very much each to their own, but that's the way I like to do it. Sort of heading towards a thing, I suppose. Okay. So again, that's just gotten some of that oil moving. Just another bit of paper. There's our second spring. And by the way, for drying springs, as you know, for the components, I'm not quite sure where it is, but I use maize to dry off some of the solvent. I don't do that for springs. Once the spring has been washed and then rinsed, and maybe rinsed again because they are quite grubby, I just wrap it in clean acid-free tissue paper and leave it to dry naturally, because I want the spring, I don't want it to be degreased for sure, and so it doesn't need to be like super oil-free. The paraffin for me is absolutely fine. So based on our principle of starting on the outside and moving in, I'm just going to do the gong now and gong note, and the same thing again. I noticed that this is, I don't know whether it's like that from you, but kind of got squidged over. The thread still works and it's not loose, but I thought, is that how it was from you, or somebody, looks like somebody's really kind of hammered the whole thing. So there we go. So we've got a bit of steel here, which is obviously rusted, corroded. So when I've washed it and rinsed it, what I'll do when we come to reassemble is to heat it with hair dryer or something like that, and apply some Renaissance wax, some microcrystalline wax, to prevent or help prevent further corrosion. But probably not a lot we can do here in terms of what this thing is going to sound like. I don't know what it sounded like when it was new, but I presume the rust isn't doing it a whole lot of good in terms of its sound. And of course, the thing is, you know, what does it sound like? Well, it sounds like a 120-year-old clock. It's as simple as that, which I'm really happy to live with. But again, I'm just going to get off some of the kind of surface dust and dirt here, and then I'm going to leave it in exactly the same way overnight, which will loosen up a bit of the rust. You can see the whole thing is already quite dirty. Oh gosh, hair is annoying. Now, luckily, I actually find this part of the process quite meditative. As I've said before about cleaning manually like this, one of the great beauties of it is, to me, that you get to actually see the object. It's very tempting to rapidly take something apart, put it back together again, and not really kind of take it in. So I do like cleaning sort of manually. Kind of, it's a bit of a state of mind, I think. So we've got quite a lot of grubby looking solvent now. So again, on the gong, because it is quite rusty, but again, a lot of that surface rust has sort of dropped off with the brushing. You could get brass tweezers and a little bit of steel wool. And again, if you wanted to go a bit further with the cleaning, just get that on there. Comme ça, and work your way around with it. Just slowly work your way around like that. Not massively bothered about that. I'd much prefer, and of course, see, you know, an argument against this is it does take time, but I think it's important. I'm really happy to spend the time cleaning manually. So you could go with that. And again, without banging on too much, the whole point of cleaning like this is you clean a bit and then you assess whether you're happy with the level of cleanliness or whether you think you want to do some more. Whereas if you go in with one kind of, unilateral approach, that's not the right word, sort of, I don't know, but if you go in with something that's very interventive or relatively interventive, then you don't get a chance to kind of throttle back. So what I'll typically do with this is to go through a first pretty quick clean, then reassess and see how we go from there. So with our nut, I'm going to put it on a bit of pegwood, screw it on there. That not only cleans out the threads a little bit, but it allows us to hold the component. Number 2, Glasgow brush. If you're not familiar with these brushes, they're a natural bristle brush, which your clockmakers thing. Buy them from clockmaker suppliers. This one is called number 2. It's a medium hardness. They run all the way from, I want to touch it with my greasy fingers, but number 4, which is goat hair, which is the softest one, often called a watch brush. And then at the other end, you get something like this, which is still natural bristle. And this is called a washing out brush with used to be a bone handle, but now the handles are plastic. So this is your kind of clock scrubbing brush. If you can, avoid synthetic bristles because they just tend to go really kind of greasy and slippy, whereas the natural bristles have got that sort of surface texture, which means that they've got a bit of bite. So again, just a bit of first stage. Remember, this is only the first stage. I'll do at least one rinse on this stuff. So I'm going to put the nut back on, which interestingly has got an integral washer. It's not that the washer is rusted onto the nut. That's just how it is in one piece. So I'm quite happy with that. That's good. So again, I'm going to wrap that and then move on to the frame. Do obviously be aware that when you're dealing with solvents like this, the whole health and safety element of it, remember, you're not only responsible for your own health and safety, but for the health and safety of others who might be impacted by your practice. So here we're in a sort of domestic setting. So you need a chemicals cabinet to store things and safely keep those chemicals out of the reach of children, obviously, and be mindful of fire hazard. So if you have things in particular like steel wool, that can burn really easily, particularly when it's soaked in mineral spirits and something. So the same with rags that might have solvent on them. Don't leave them hanging around. Either put them outside where the solvent can evaporate, or buy a metal bin that's specifically designed for that purpose, which I've splashed out, pardon the pun, and got one down here, which you should empty every night anyway. Okay, so I think, we've got the pendulum bob and bell. Now the bell is, I don't know whether it's brass or not, or whether it's plated. It appears to be brass. not massively convinced by that, but anyway, just going to get rid of this solvent and pour that into the waste. Don't need that anymore. Fresh funnel somewhere. I was organized, but now I'm not. Oh, there it is. So for the disposal of the waste with this stuff, we're quite lucky because we have a sort of household waste recycling place about half a mile down the road, and they will take this. There's a big difference when you become, because we have, it takes me like 6 months to fill up one of these cans. But if you're commercial and you're disposing of chemicals, there are some crazy high sort of minimal charges for this stuff. I know when I was in practice before, I was quoted £800 to get rid of old solvents as a kind of minimum charge, really, which is fair enough. I suppose the problem with that is that it leads people to either stash them up and store them, or to get rid of them kind of illegally or irresponsibly, and which is a shame. I did eventually get rid of them. We were decommissioning a diesel tank, and the people who were doing that kindly took them away with that cost. Certainly worth bearing in mind. I think, yeah, for most people, if you go down the household recycling centre, they're usually quite happy to take that stuff. The extractor, what is paraffin? Oh, so I'm using paraffin to clean the spring. Paraffin, I think they call it kerosene in the States. Is that right? So it's a heavy oil-based solvent that they use in lamps and heaters for greenhouses, for glass houses. I think paraffin is kerosene. I think I've got that right in America. And it's a good question. All right, the cathedral gong, yes. The hammer has leather in it and not metal on metal. It's a good point. The hammer leather has completely worn away or got knocked down. So I do have some 4mm diameter leather that I got for a French clock project. So it'll be cool to replace that. Do you know whether that's threaded in there or whether it's pushed in or glued in or pinned in? I know on the French clocks, it's threaded in. Might be glued in. Anyway, how is the leather held in there? That's a good question. So I'll be replacing that. The extractor is a mobile extractor because in my old life, I had a workshop, which I don't really want at the moment if I can avoid it. And so I had extraction outside. In here, I have to recirculate. So I use a carbon filter extractor by Naderman. It's quite a lot of money, but of course there's no way of working around it. And the good thing with this is that you can take it on site. So I prefer to do site work. So if I'm Team Up and Clock Club has gone off to speak to the daughter who's just come back to university. So I got them distracted. So it's by Naderman, Nedermann. I don't know whether it's written on here, but if you can see, it's kind of got articulated arm and this hood thing, and it's got, ooh, bang, bang, bang. it's got a replaceable carbon filter, which I'm going to replace. It's about due for replacement now, actually. I've had it a year, but it costs about £500 to replace the filter. So the thing was about 1,500, and it's quite cool. It's nicely made and it fits nicely around the bench. But if you can, and you can get planning permission for it, then I would use extraction outside, because of course that's much better. You don't have to buy the filters and it gets the stuff out of the way. I mean, I don't use much solvent anyway, quite a big area here. I could probably get away with using a smaller area, or in fact, some of the conservators will use it in a gel medium to actually keep the solvent more kind of localized. You could use a respirator, but of course that doesn't do any good for other people who are around. So Nederman, I forgot the number of it, but I can find that. Next week. It's Swedish. Really nice, neat little system. And as I say, it's really good for me because I can take it on site. So for things like overhauling long case clocks, where you don't really need a workshop, you know, as long as you don't have to repair or make too much, it's quite nice just to take this along, put it in the back of the van, and then you can work. And you can also work in front of the public. Again, I wouldn't use this many solvents. I'd use them much more sort of locally. But you can do this kind of conservation in action stuff, which is great for me because it gets exposure. And if an institution is paying me to work on their object, they might as well get some value for money out of it. So again, this is all the first kind of rinse. Right, thank you. Time for Clocks about the, sorry, it was Time for Clocks, wasn't it? It was sent information about these clocks. So yeah, we were talking about the hinge, weren't we? I don't know what you thought about my hinge repair, but anyway, at least it's nice and strong and it's relatively neat. Kerosene, right? Okay. That's interesting about the leather on the hammer. We'll have a look at that next week. So presumably to get the old one out, I'll just have to kind of drill it or something. Usually just pushed in, not threaded. Okay, that's really useful. I have got some, don't quite know where it went, but I'll have a look. 4mm, I said 4mm diameter. It looks about the same diameter material, leather, for that French clock I was working on. So, again, this is our sort of first rinse here. And let's have a look at these plates. Now, I did get quite a lot of response about the plates from the internet. And again, Time for Clocks maybe knows, because I'm still got it in the back of my mind that these plates were plated with something and not just steel when they were new. Because if you look around here, there's something that really appears to be kind of gold colored, and around here as well. It might be a figment of my imagination. They might have been lacquered. It might just be some kind of residue from the oil. But I'm interested to know whether anybody has one that is plated. So again, we'll just move back to our washing out brush here and our little chestnut brush, I think they call it. So you will know by now, I think, that when I'm cleaning the plates like this or cleaning a component, I'm really breaking the object up into two distinct areas. They are working and what I call working and non-working surfaces. So things like bearing surfaces are working surfaces, and the frame, the most of it is like the chassis in a car. It does something for sure, but basically what it does is it holds all the other components in place. So as much as I'm, for instance, here, this bit, which is quite sticky with oil, so that will sort of wash off after a bit. I'm not massively interested in refinishing that, because as long as it's not actually causing sort of active corrosion or attracting more dirt or something, so what if it's stained? I'm quite happy with that. It's a 120-year-old clock. However, that's very different from the bearings. I'm not happy if they're contaminated, because of course that is going to exacerbate wear. So as much as I'll just basically brush the frame, I'm actually going to use pegwood and maybe even steel wool on the bearing holes. So get more and more and more stuff on the go here. Just want to get this moving. So I think, I mean, it's not really the time or the place to discuss it, but I think on a lot of fora or other Facebook groups, people wouldn't call this clean. And of course, the answer is that's fine. But what do you mean by clean? And I think a lot of what people call clean is actually refinished, whether that's chemically or mechanically. Anyway. So again, I won't labor this too much now, because it's going to take a while. And again, I'll be very interested to see right, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, Dell and Time for Clocks, about this plating issue. So these appear to be iron plates or steel with brass bushes in them, obviously. But as I said, there's some, that you can see there. Again, I put some pictures on Facebook, but it might just be, as you say, some kind of oxide from the where other components have been, or lubricant or something like that. Go ahead. Cool. So I'm doing two things at once, three things at once, as always. Yeah, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. How was your friend?
Oh yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Enjoy Edinburgh. Bye. Sorry. Daughter's just back from her first term at university, so she's now gone off straight away. So there you go. She's going to Scotland to watch the rugby. Cool. So I've just kind of started again this process of warming up the oil, get it moving, old oil and whatever else is on there, nicotine, so on. You could actually, if you've got that clock that's got yeah, if the plates are steel, like in medieval chamber clocks, where you've got iron plates, typically they're bushed with brass, presumably for different reasons here. I think they started off as steel in steel or iron in iron, which is not a great bearing, but they typically get upgraded. Whereas these, and I presume, and again, I don't know much about the American manufacturer, that brass was really in demand, difficult to get hold of, maybe very expensive. So they would have used a steel plate, I think, and then as you can see here, put in a brass insert. Let's just have a little look. Yeah. Yeah, it's incredibly economical use of materials. So you've got the cock here for the escape wheel. That's the front of the clock, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. So front cock for the escape wheel. Again, it's a pressed bit of steel or iron with a relatively small brass bushing there, which takes us on to bushing, of course. So if I were bushing this, and maybe we can do a bush just for the hell of it, I'd want to work within that bush. I wouldn't want to take that out and redo it. If I could help it, I'd try and put a bush within a bush, which again is seen by some as being bad practice, but yeah, there you go. So just started on that. I'm going to peg out the holes in a minute and just have another go at this. Not laboring it. I mean, on the non-working surfaces here, basically, I'm going to do what I'm doing with the other parts, leave this overnight, wash again tomorrow or during the week or sometime. And if this staining hasn't come off, then I'm going to say, fair enough, I'm going to leave it there because I'm not sure what harm it's doing. It's slightly three-dimensional sticky feeling. So anyway, let's see. So yeah, on these bushes and these plates, for the components that are not rotating, they're reciprocating like the levers. They haven't pushed it, they just left it steel in steel or iron in iron, which is really quite cool. Yeah, incredibly economical with the brass. I'm just sharpening my pegwood. Some people use a knife. I prefer to use a very coarse, sharp file. I find it tears up the surface a bit and gives the wood a bit of bite, if you like. So this clock doesn't really have oil sinks as such, but normally I'd sharpen one end to a point and the other end I'd make it into like a screwdriver blade type thing. In fact, I've done it here on this one. So found a couple of flats like that to do the oil sinks, but there aren't really any. So normally you would peg out, so just twisting the hole and check for dirtiness. Not a lot in this case, oh, there's some there, look. You can see that is actually coming out quite dirty, and continue round the whole frame like that, pegging out, pegging out, pegging out. Keep cleaning the wood. And then if you really want to go the next step further with the pivot holes, and it's something I do on a reasonably regular basis, that's to take a tiny bit of steel wool and put it on the pegwood and twiddle that about in the hole. Now, the steel wool cuts very rapidly, so that absolutely is refinishing and also causing wear. So again, nothing is free, but let's just take this pivot here just to demonstrate. Maybe I've got too much on there. So not to affect the plate around the pivot hole, but just literally that, and the same on the other side. will, again, it depends what you mean by clean. Actually, there might be an oil sink here. There is an oil sink, so ignore what I said about this clock doesn't have oil sinks. It does have oil sinks. So I'll just give that a little bit of a clean. So you can see that if you're really concerned that your working surfaces, and again, this is where I get slightly worried about the rationale for cleaning or refinishing, that bearing hole now, it obviously needs pegging out again because it's got steel wool fibers in there and then rinsing. But I consider that actually refinished, which is maybe good. I don't know, but it's certainly clean, quote unquote. Anyway, whereas the material around it doesn't do anything other than hold the bearing in place. So if I've gone over that with my brushes and given it a good old scrub, and that's as clean as it's going to get, then I'm happy with that staining being on there. So you get the idea. Right, okay. Oh, it's interesting that the Ingram catalogue says brass plates. That's really cool because I'm pretty sure these aren't. That maybe is the answer then. So it would be cool to see one with brass plates, but I think what they've done here is they've used steel plates. Now, whether that was, I think somebody said the war years, right, okay, that's really interesting. So I'm pretty sure I'll get a very, sorry. Yeah, destructive testing. These are steel plates that I think have been brass plated. So when you open the back of the clock, it looked like brass because presumably brass was seen as being good quality or something. Or as you say, if they advertised them with brass plates and for whatever reason they moved over to steel, a bit like when you buy brass screws down the DIY shop nowadays and they're often plated steel, then that would be quite interesting. So yeah, I'll put this on the Facebook group and that. Cool. Well, really, I'll just turn that off for a second so I can hear myself think. Really enjoyed the chat this evening, and Team Up Clock Club's back now. Daughter's cleared off. I think that's really, yeah, lots of fascinating stuff there. I'll take some photos during the week. I'll stick them up on Facebook. I'll continue with some preliminary cleaning. So maybe, just maybe by this time next week, I'll have all the cleaning done and we can go back to the dreaded challenging question of those pivots, some of which are like half the original diameter. Doesn't bother me at all. And the bushing, of course, which is all good fun. So massive thank you to Team Up Clock Club.
Did you find out where you got the extractor from?
Yeah, I did. It's from Nederman, Nederman. And if anybody wants one, I will put you in touch with the supplier or the guy that, because there was so many, it was quite complicated because they normally fit out factories with massive industrial systems. I don't think they make many of these small kind of bench units. So it came from Sweden, they made it, but I'm really happy with it. It's what it enables me to operate here, and I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. I'd have to go off somewhere and rent a proper workshop, which would totally defeat the object. So Nederman, really cool machine. We'll put it up on the Facebook group if anybody's interested. So great to see you. I was going to say we'll see you Saturday, but we won't see you Saturday because no more Open Clock Club, at least for the time being anyway, until the 18th of December when we've got a Christmas special. So we'll see you on Facebook. Have a great weekend. And if not, we will see you this time. I think I'm here next week. I'll put it on Facebook just in case, because sometimes I've got a contract and I can't be here on a Thursday, but I think I'm here next Thursday. So thanks very much for all your friendly chat, and we will see you again soon. Bye for now. Okay. Forgot to turn it off.